Okay, so welcome everybody to number 119 of the Circle of Wine Writers Let's Talk series. Today's topic is talking all about rosé with Liz Gabay, Ben Bernheim, and our speakers today, who Liz will introduce. I'd like to extend a welcome to those joining you for the first time who are Circle members, and also to those of you who are non-members. The Circle was founded in 1960 in the UK, and today has 270 plus members around the world and include wine writers, educators, broadcasters, and other professional communicators. The membership's now split 50-50 between the UK and overseas, which is quite a change from when it was first set up. There's more information about the Circle on our website, and also any details if you're interested in joining. I'd now like to hand over to Liz Saggis, who's the committee member who kindly steers all of these presentations for us. Over to you, Liz.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome Liz Gabay again, the Queen of Rosé. Do we need to say anything else? And with her, perhaps the Dauphin, her son, Ben Bernheim. And also the producers who Liz will introduce in a moment. This session is very timely, and we're delighted that Liz and Ben were able to do it now, because it's just about 3 weeks before they start their Diversity of Rosé summer, with events, in face-to-face events in the UK from June to September. And they sound fascinating. And for a wider interest, there's the rosé writing competition, which they're running alongside it, which has some spectacular prizes, I understand. But let's go over to Liz for this, what should be a fascinating session. And do please put your hand up if you've got a question. And the details of the events that are coming up are at the top of the chat. There's a link so you can see everything that's happening.
Thanks a lot, Liz. So the idea behind this discussion was I had received an email with a long list of very, very mundane questions about rosé. Is it true that rosé is always pale pink? Just the classic questions that I've been receiving for the past 10 years, and nothing had moved forward.
Does darker mean sweet? Is the best always from Provence?
And I thought, this is really quite desperate, and we're doing this big tasting in London on the 18th of June called Drink Pink Wednesday. And I thought if we're still thinking along these lines, maybe it'd be quite good to have a discussion and just see what everyone thinks. There's nothing more daunting than walking into a tasting of 200 wines and thinking, I have no idea where I'm going to start and I don't really know anything. So I've invited 4 producers who will have stands at Drink Pink Wednesday. We've got Eva Baratta from Tuscany. We have Stelios Boutaris from Kyriani in northern Greece. We have Jörg Schweitzer, who is representing the new appellation DAC Rosalia in northeastern Austria. And we have Stefan Langman from Styria, who makes a Schilcher. Just to be able to join in the conversation for very different rosés, different backgrounds, for any questions. And I don't know if all the producers would like to just say hello if they're around.
Hello, I'm Eva Baratta from, actually at the moment, from my car. I'm trying desperately to get to my computer, but there has been an accident. So in 10 minutes, I'll be able to be at my computer and say hello properly to all of you.
Drive carefully. Stefan?
Yeah, hello. I'm Stefan from the southern part of Austria in Styria, from Weststeiermark. And at the tasting, there will be my daughter Verena, but she can't do it today because she is at the university, the competition. And we have the famous Blauer Wildbacher grape varieties in our area.
Stelios?
Hi, I'm Stelios Boutaris from Kyriani Estate in northwestern Greece. We have a winery in Nausa where we focus on reds from Xinomavro. And of course, we make the rosés behind the mountain, closer to the border, in the appellation of Amindion. Actually, the only appellation for rosé in Greece. Rosé, sparkling rosé, and red as well. But for rosé, the only appellation in Greece is Amindion.
Fantastic. And you?
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Georg. I'm coming from the eastern part of Austria, the Burgenland region, representing the Rosalia DSC, which is as well red wine, but rosé in specific, and there the variety is Blaufränkisch.
So we have some very, very different grape varieties. And when Ben and I were going through producers that we work with, we've noticed that the amount of different grape varieties producing rosé is growing all the time. It used to be just a mix of grapes, or sometimes a leftover batch of grapes, or very pale skin grapes. And now the amount of grapes are growing. So we have Wilbacher, we have Blaufränkisch, we have Zinamavro, and we have Sangiovese. I can remove, all producing very, very different styles of rosé. So the questions that we were discussing earlier, if anyone has any further ideas on it, was what are the best grape varieties? How do they make different styles? What does the market look for in rosé? And I thought it'd be quite interesting to get feedback from people attending, what they're looking for rosé. And how does rosé fit into the modern market? You know, red wine consumption is going down, and Ben will talk a bit more on that, I think. How do we promote diversity in rosé styles? How can we open up the market to not just always look for one style? Climate change and sustainability. We were all chatting about climate earlier. What is the importance of color? Can rosé age? And the first question we had from Michelle Padberg, the importance of light strike on rosé. So I thought maybe we'd start with that one. Ben and I are with a Tavel in dark glass at the moment, dark rosé. And this is a Tavel which the oldest vintage we've had of this wine was 1975. So I think dark glass certainly helping there. And Stefan, would you like to sort of talk about why you have your rosé in dark glass?
I think it's the same with the light strike. We try with Blaufränkisch to make really nice schilkers. They are spontaneously fermented, longer on leaves, and they are not driven only by primary fruit. They have much more complexity, and I think the dark bottle saves everything perfect, and you can drink this wine in 5, 10, 15 years. The big problem we see on the market is that the dark bottle doesn't work really nice in the shelf. But these wines in the single vineyard range are mostly sold in restaurants, and there it's not a big problem. But in the shelf, dark bottles are not so easy to sell.
Do you think it would be easier to sell if it weren't described as a rosé or a schilcher, but if it was sold as a very, very light red, because almost every red is in dark bottle?
I think a lot of people are thinking about a light red wine when they see the color of schilcher, because it's the berries are really dark. It's a really dark grape variety, and the color is a little bit deeper and more intense. And people are thinking of a light red wine sometimes, but for me, it's classical rosé. We have only 3, 4, 5, 6 hours maturation on skins. But maybe it's on the selling point, it's easier when they think about light red wine, maybe.
Do you have a glass of your schilcher at hand to show the colour?
Pull in a little bit more.
It's nothing like a winemaker happens to have the glass. It's a bit darker. It's definitely not a Provence rosé there.
Oh.
And what about Rosalia? None of them are in dark glass, are they?
No, none of them. especially we do have two different styles. The one is, let's say, the normal daily base, which is clearly a normal glass bottle. The other one, which is the origin of rosé, which is based on Blaufränkisch, has got the bright bottle as well. However, it's made in a more powerful way. So we talk about 13.5 ABV. So the wine is a little bit more resistant against disturbances. So it can lead for a couple of years in the bottle, but the DSC is only existing since 2017. So let's see how it's going to proceed.
And what about you, Stelios? Do any of your rosés come in dark glass?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. We started with a dark rosé in a light bottle, and it went very well. Then the Provence fashion came. We went for a lighter colored. But lately we've been working on agathoto, which means the one with the thorn, which is a rosé, fermented in barrel, aged in barrel for about 8 months. So this is bottled in a dark. We want it to age. It's definitely a wine that goes to restaurants as well.
There's a question. Amber glass blocks the most damaging wavelengths for light strike. This makes me wonder if anyone is working on a pink-coloured glass for rosé glass. Ooh, what an exciting idea! A sort of pink amber coloured glass bottle for the rosé.
Okay, it might not be perfect, but it would address the marketing concern and the shelf presence, but prevent the UVA and the fluorescent. The supermarket is amber. It wouldn't be amber, but it could potentially be close. I haven't seen any literature on this. It just was an idea that I had, crazy idea, and I don't have any money to fund a study. So
I suppose it's not quite the same, but I'm thinking, say, Minuti 281, which has the blue wax stripping down almost all the bottle, is an interesting compromise between protecting some of the wine from light strike while still being visually.
So if it's in the ice bucket, it's got a blue neck, which is quite good. I think what's interesting is that although we're talking about light strike as in terms of quality, it does link very much to this fact that we still think of rosé very much as a wine of a certain color as opposed to a wine in itself, and which is quite an interesting dilemma in that even though we were talking about this in the last discussion with light strike and we're all saying color doesn't matter, we are still thinking about it. So which actually comes to really, what does the market look for in a rosé? Is it still looking for something that's pale pink? I mean, I don't know whether producers, when they're selling, Stefan had said not on the shelf, better in restaurants. Do we see rosé, serious rosé, as being something only available in restaurants, or do people go to shops looking for serious rosé?
Well, I know in France, rosé sales are much, much higher in supermarkets. So it's a supermarket or a retail-driven wine.
In France?
In France.
How about in America or Austria or Greece? How do people see rosé sales? Is it restaurant wine or is it, Meg?
There's a lot of by the glass restaurant wines. I wouldn't call them really fine wines, but in fine wine shops, the rosés that are not European, the American rosés, are very expensive usually. They're Pinot Noir from California, Oregon. I'd love Neil's perspective on this, especially because I know, Neil, you work in a tasting room there as well. They're $75, $85, because the grape programs are expensive and they're using high quality fruit. So that is marketed as fine wine, obviously, and a gastronomic wine. That's my perspective. There's also a lot of supermarket plonk, don't get me wrong, but.
Winnie's raising her hand there.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak about South Africa here, but I think you're right. Mostly here, it's also either a hand sell in a restaurant or mostly supermarket wines. But the imported, we have very few imported ones, and those, of course, go to the people who know the wines, like Domaine Ott and those. Michael Friedjon brings them in, and those have a very good distribution. But oh, is that what you're drinking? No.
We're on to the second bottle.
It's bottle number 3 for the evening after the next one.
But rosé is definitely becoming much bigger in South Africa, and we are selling and drinking a hell of a lot more of it. So, which is encouraging, but it's more always to the lighter. People are not doing it in the darker styles, which incidentally I saw a hell of a lot of now at the IWC tasting in London. There were a lot that were darker in color, but not in South Africa. In South Africa, they go for the lighter. The lighter, the better, even if it tastes like nothing. That's sort of the fashion, and more sophisticated to drink the lighter colors.
It's this wonderful cyclical. We actually had a very nice South African rosé last week from Copper Lining.
Honoric Wines.
No, so it was, I don't know, there was something about it was made for a birthday, and it was an old vintage, so they sent in the 2022, and it was, wow, that's really nice. Which is actually comes to another question about, we've looked at paleness, and can rosés age? Do we look at rosés which age? Do you find in South Africa people still want very young vintages?
We do. However, there are also quite a few older ones on particularly wine lists, and particularly with pairing menus in the restaurants that do wine pairings with their food menu. And I must say, I see it a lot more on the tables. But of course, the ones in South Africa that are in the restaurants are the higher priced rosés, and I would say the bulk easy drinking ones are still sold in the supermarkets, but they are making quite a fuss of rosé as a food pairing wine, and that actually is really lovely because, I mean, particularly with our long summers and so on, I mean, we certainly drink much more rosé nowadays, and there are some very good ones in South Africa, some really good ones.
So can I ask the 4 producers how much? Oh, sorry, Neil, you've got a question. I've just seen the yellow hand. It's
not a question. I wanted to respond to Meg suggesting that I have something to say about rosés in Oregon. This is the big season we're heading into we're well into spring, and I get a lot of emails from wineries that are offering their rosé. It's rosé of Pinot Noir, of course, that's made available. They tend to be medium color. The range in price is anywhere from $30 up to about $60 where I work. The winery I work at is probably the most expensive rosé that I know. And in fact, it turns out that it won't be making rosé anymore after the last vintage because they can make more money making the red Pinot. They do it with the Saignée method as opposed to the intentional. But a lot of the wineries, one I used to work for, had vines set aside specifically to make rosé. That was Chehalem Winery, and made a delightful rosé that way. But White Rose, where I work, is getting out of the rosé business because it's just not cost effective.
So what's really, really interesting about the price of rosé, I only have the British statistics in the UK, but French wine in Britain, the most expensive colour on average is rosé. And that sounds completely counterintuitive when you think about it, but one of the main reasons for that is there is so much very, very inexpensive red and very, very inexpensive white. Typically sort of Sauvignon Blanc of $4.99 in the supermarket. There is so much of that being drunk that actually drags the average price down, and for French wine specifically. And so for French wine in the UK, rosé is actually the most expensive colour, which is funny because you wouldn't ever speak to a producer who'd think, well, we want to sell a more expensive wine, so we'll switch to rosé. But it's a French thing, not a Californian or an Oregon thing.
Interesting. So can I just ask the four producers, maybe start with Ava, who's now left the car. How, if we're looking at premium rosé and we're looking for hand selling and dark glass and more expensive, how important is the restaurant trade in selling rosé?
Well, actually, I'm a Tuscan producer, and I can tell for the Italian rosé consumption, restaurants have been very, very important for the changing of the attitude of the public towards rosé, because in Italy, rosé was not so well, has not a big reputation, was considered a low-class quality wine. In the last 10 years, there has been a complete change in the wine production, wine rosé production. We have very high quality products now, and the restaurants have been the porte-parole for that. So they have been educating the public. Of course, there has been the demand for rosé in restaurants. At the beginning, was mainly by visitors, by foreigner visitors, and not by Italian public. And now every restaurant must have not just one, but offer a variety of rosé in its menu, in the wine list, because foreign, but also tourists, but also now the Italian public is asking for relaxation regarding the young rosé, the last inch, and also about the colors. The dark color here was a sign of the bleeding, rosé from bleeding, so low quality rosé. Now it's not absolutely the case. So the scene of the rosé has changed dramatically here in Italy in the last 10 years. For quality production, for the kind and variety of offer, and for the fun. It's a wine that is really fun now for the people. So it's a very interesting moment.
Interesting. What about you, Stelios? Is restaurants important in selling the premium rosé?
Oh, absolutely. If I may, I always say one thing. I say that the rosé market should be divided in two time zones. Pre-Whispering Angel and post-Whispering Angel. I hope this is not annoying anybody, but I mean, if you think about it, rosé was exactly as I was saying. I mean, you would drink it in the southern countries. You would drink some rosé, but you would send in America something like samples in January. You had a very small window of two months to ship it, and then that's it. Rosé a restaurant would buy one or two rosés, work it till June, July. That's it. Now restaurants want 6, 7, 8 rosés. Okay, and I think that the way Whispering Angel marketed rosé as a drink, really, and not as wine, has changed completely all the rosé market in the world. Everybody's producing a rosé now. People drink rosé mostly at restaurants, but now they drink it at home as well. So absolutely, restaurants are the driving force. I mean, the driving power. They do. That's where we drink most of the rosé. But more and more people drink rosé at home these days.
Interesting. Stefan, because you have 5 different rosés in your range, do you divide up your sales in between?
We have the DSC system since 18, and we have the area wines, the village wines, and the single vineyard wines. The area wines are the lighter ones, easy drinking, a little bit more freshness, more acidity. These wines are sold a lot in supermarkets and on the shelf. And from the village wines on up to the single vineyards, we sell a lot in restaurants. And the restaurants are really important because they educate the consumers, they educate their guests They pair it with good food, and then they have an idea what a really good Schilcher can be and how it can age. And we have also in the export in Japan now, they have 21 as actual vintage from single vineyard Hochgreil, and that's a really nice one with good structure and so on. And the restaurant business is really important for us to educate the people that rosé is not only a wine for one year. That's really important, I think so.
I was actually going on to Jörg for that, but what you've just said, I'm going to pass to Ben now to talk about old vintages. From what you've just said, I think that will.
There was a fantastic article by Jane Anson a couple of years ago in which she didn't just talk about the old vintages, but she talked about which restaurants have verticals of certain wines.
Because, go on the website.
And at the end of her article, she was talking about some big Bordeaux chateau, and she was saying that these are the great vintages, and here are the restaurants around the world that have more than 2, 3, 4 vintages, which is a really, really fantastic initiative, and it's something that I think we'd love to see for rosé, because it's even now it's still very, very rare to find a restaurant with more than 1 or 2 vintages. And I think there's this mindset of they wait for one vintage to sell out completely before moving on to the next.
So do you want to mention the debate?
So we've spoken briefly about sort of Drink Pink Wednesday, the event we're holding in June, where we want to talk about the diversity of the rosé world, with rosés all around the world. But in October also, we're holding a vertical tasting with Libération Tardive, also 10 plus wines, they've changed the name, but Libération Tardive aiming to sort of promote these old vintages. I think it's something that people think about for red wines all the time and not so much for rosés. So it's an event we're really looking forward to. And it's funny that Whispering Angel should be brought up, because Whispering Angel is all about that drink. But of course, they have Garrus on their list as well, that is supposedly all about these old vintages.
What's been interesting, though, is which producers have the confidence to show older vintages, because quite a lot of vineyards will say, Dominique's put in the chat, the Libération Tardive website for the organisation, is how many winemakers do not hold back a library of older vintages for rosé. And so there's a lot of people, a lot of well-known producers who say this rosé ages really, really well. And you kind of go, well, can we taste an older vintage? Well, we don't have any. There aren't any available. And I think we are still in a learning curve. How does rosé age? A lot of people say it doesn't have the bright fruitiness of a young wine, but forgetting that red and white wines also age and it's not quite the same. And so maybe I can just go back to Jörg here. You said that Rosalia DAC started very recently. Is anyone keeping older vintages?
Yes, they are doing. And just following up on what Stefan was saying, in Austria in general, more than 50% of the consumption is done in restaurants and at events. So especially the premium rosés are selling quite well in the restaurants. And there we talk about rosés which are aged in French oak barrels, in barrique 225-liter barrels. And these are especially made for aging. So we think about vintages 1920, drink it now, which is not that old, of course, but it gives you an idea how they can develop. So it's not about the primary fruit, but still the color is on a quite light base. This is what the Austrians are looking for right now, for the traditional rosé, not talking about the Schilke, of course.
So I think that is something that maybe this is very much personal taste, what we're looking for in rosé. I know the two of us love the older vintages, love the way it sort of comes together and mellows. And I have to say that Ben is doing sterling work filling our cellar with old vintages of rosé, which we're not allowed to touch until they're certainly old enough.
I mean, one of the reasons for that is, what is an old rosé? Is it just something that's been there for 6 months, or is it something that's been there for 15 years? And there are producers for whom the current vintage of their rosé is still 2013. Actually, that's one of the wines we'll have at the vertical tasting in October. It's a current vintage rosé 2013. Is that an old rosé, or is that just a current vintage wine? And at that point, is the 2012 ancient, or is it just, it's 6 months after release? What actually is an old rosé? I mean, actually, we didn't really start the conversation with this, but when Stefan was saying 6 hours of maceration for his Schilcher, I was thinking, and is that even a rosé? What is a rosé? Where do we draw the line? And it's an interesting thing that we could actually open this to the group. What is a rosé? And does anyone have a definition that they think they want to share that actually is maybe an outlandish definition of rosé, or on the contrary, the definition that they think once and for all defines rosé?
Right.
Hands up.
No hands up. Is everyone just being very, very cautious because they don't really want to put their names on the line for what they think of a classic rosé?
Liz is going for it. Liz Saggers is going for it. Go for it, Liz.
Go for it, Liz. I find even more comparatively simple rosé can be far more enjoyable. AL5?
I think it's a typo.
When it's aged, I'm guessing. I think that is. But maybe we're in a different group.
We speak to a lot of producers who say, "Oh, we tell them that we believe in aged rosé," and the producer will say, "Oh, yeah, my rosé is far better in August than it is in June," which is funny because we wouldn't think about that as aged if that were a red or a white or a sparkling. So why are we somehow saying that 3 months of aging suddenly makes it ancient for rosé?
Okay, so I'm gonna sort of shift this round a bit. We talked a bit at the beginning about grape varieties, the diversity of grape varieties, and between the 4 producers that we have today, you all have different grape varieties. Would we say that some grape varieties age better than others? Eva?
Well, we produce a rosé which is mainly done with Merlot. There is Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Mourvèdre. 80% is Merlot, though. This is the color. You see, it's a pale, but it's not a really Provence color because it's more intense. It's less yellow. There is more pink, because of course we reflect all the vibrant climate, intense summers that we have in our latitude. We had a vertical recently in an internal studio vertical in the winery, and we went back. We started, the first vintage was 2014, and we did the mistake of trying to selling it out completely, and so we have very few bottles. I must say that until the 2020 vintage, we were surprised. So going back 4, even 5 years, we were really surprised by the result. And I think it would be very interesting to see how a rosé can age doing a blind taste without knowing it is a rosé. So keeping out of your mind the prejudice that is a wine that must be drunk young. So doing blind, we did it. We tried to think that it's not, I don't know what I'm drinking. And we were surprised also of going back, going even backwards in 2018, 19, we're really keeping up. So it's an interesting point and now we're keeping a reserva every year to see what's happening with the rosé after years and of bottle aging.
So do you use a dark glass for if you're trying to taste rosé?
No, we just cover the bottles actually. Yes, they're not so organized, but we will.
Interesting thought. And what about Blaufränkisch and Rosalia? Because I think Blaufränkisch has vast potential for aging rosé.
Yeah, so it goes together with the climate of the region, which is clearly a cold climate region. So there are the Alps just close by, so up to 2,000 meters even. So you can expect during nighttime quite cold temperatures. So we get a lot of acidity and very good tannin, phenolic structure on the wine. So Blaufränkisch is considered to be the best variety in this region for making rosés because of the structure. And I would say for the ageability of these wines, they can really, really age. And yeah, color is like a Provence color, kind of. But as said, it's more a more powerful style of rosé wine, which has a very long-lasting, fresh finish with a lot of phenolics on it.
Interesting. And what about Schilcher, Wilbacher?
Yes, we are really the cool climate region in Austria, I think so. We have the vineyards between 380 up to 640 meters. We have also the Alps behind with the cold winds. And the big goal in our area is that we can have full ripe grapes with lower sugar levels. And I think the secret to have a good potential for aging of rosé wines is the winemaking process. When I go back 20, 30 years, my first vintage was 97. We got a lot of new technique, cold fermentation and all these things. And since 10, 15 years, we go back fermenting warmer, longer on lees, fermenting in big used oaks, 14, 15, 16 months on full lees. Blauvildbacher, we have a lot of tannins, we have a really good acidity, and I think if you do it really good in the cellar and also in the vineyard is the most important first, you have a really good potential of aging in this grape variety. And I think Blauvildbacher, traditional made as a rosé wine, has really big potential for wines that can age.
Interesting. So we're not just looking at grape varieties, we're looking at how winemaking's developed. And Stelios, you also have a wide range of different quality levels. Would you agree on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you think of Greece, people have been to the Cyclades, the islands, or in Crete. Where we are, it's more like Austria. You talked about, elevation. We're at 750 meters elevation. We get a lot of snow in the winter. And Xinomavro, our variety, is the main characteristic is the quite high acidity and balance of the phenolics, which means that it can age really, really nicely. I mean, we make a rosé, dark rosé, mostly for the supermarkets, for the people to take home. We make l'Esprit du Lac with a French name, a Provençal rosé, that's mostly for restaurants. And of course, we make Agaphoto. It's a rosé from Xinomavro. As I said earlier, fermented and aged in 1 and 2 ton barriques for about a year. I mean, we're talking about aging. We release it a year after fermentation. So it already has some aging in the barrel. I think it will do very, very well in the years to come. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds quite good. So just a question, Meg, my definition of rosé is a red wine made like a white wine. And it's the reason why I think one of the reasons we were asking about definition is every so often we come up with a definition and then we find a rosé that breaks the definition. I'm thinking of, is it Pandemonium in Rioja? No, what's its name? There's a rosé.
Yeah. Well,
a rosé in Panoramica. There's a rosé in Rioja which is 80% white grapes, and then they a whole bunch macerate 20% Grenache in the white wine to get a rosé. Were there any others that?
Well, rosé sparkling wines, rosé champagne, obviously is a blended wine.
Exactly.
But it's I think we get into all these, like, we thin slice the definitions so much and try to take the whole world of wine into account. And yet it is a red wine, red grape, black grapes, vinified more like a white wine. And yes, if you let it macerate longer, you're going to get more color. It's going to go more toward Tavel, or it might even look like a Schiava. You know, there are some red wines that are darker than some rosé wines. So it's a very crude definition, but I think it helps us to sort of remember it's through the process that the rosé is made, right? It's through holding back something or doing certain things that you wouldn't necessarily do for a red wine.
I think that, I mean, this is a Pinot Gris rosé from northern France, from Rouy. Just sort of an idea. I mean, rosé, there is no legal definition for what is a rosé, strangely. And I do sometimes hold back. I really dislike defining wine by colour, because as you say, it can be from a red wine to a Blanc de Noir and anything in between. Colour shouldn't really maybe be that definition for that. And we've noticed a lot of slightly darker rosés coming through right now because there's this trend for summer reds.
Is a summer red a rosé? So it's a great question. If it's 24, 48 hours maceration, is it a rosé? Should we be talking about summer reds instead of rosés tonight? It's a more dynamic category. It's
right now.
And any strong thoughts?
Okay, so we're leading the discussion, and do feel free to sort of leap in and say if you disagree, because this is very much our opinion. We'd mentioned in the press release that we wanted to launch, we have launched a rosé writing competition, largely because we feel that there are a lot of articles about rosé, not the fault of writers, I think very much the fault of editors, if there are any editors listening in, who stick with these are the 10 best rosés that we're recommending, often limited to what's available in local shops or the market that we're writing for. And we had rather hoped that by having this competition, it can be on a blog post or on someone's private website, local newspaper, anything really, to say, could we do between us as writers search out more discussion, more investigation, more philosophy, poetic writing on rosé, maybe moving on necessarily from always definition, but just to try and raise the quality of rosé writing from beyond a listicle. As I say, editors could do a lot by not always asking for a listicle. And how do people feel about that? Do they think that they've got an outlet for writing more interesting articles on rosé?
I'm all for it, and we can publish it in the circular. We can publish winning entries in the circular.
Well, that would be fantastic. Because I think
Liz has got a comment.
Yeah.
Go, Liz. I think you're unmuted.
Yes, I'm sorry about last time. I just to say that I'm one of the very fortunate wine writers who, okay, I write for a small circulation newspaper, but I've got freedom to write how I like. I'm not asked to write lists, and no, it's just great. I just wish there were more people who had that freedom.
Does anyone else have freedom to write more or less how they feel about wine?
Winnie?
Yeah, I do. I write for a national newspaper, and I've never ever been told what to write about or what to write or to give my opinion or not to give my opinion, and who to highlight and who not to highlight. So it's actually been great that way. So I think it's much more honest, if I can say what I want to say. But I don't normally write bad things. I will just leave those wines out. If wines are sent to me to write about and I don't like them, I won't write about them and say they were horrible. I'll just not write about them rather. and rather just highlight the industry and the successes in the industry rather, and hope people follow that advice, because normally that's often followed up by somebody saying, you know, why didn't you put my wine in? And I say, well, I didn't think it was up to scratch with the rest that I did write about. And then often we do a tasting of benchmarking, because I find that a lot of winemakers don't benchmark their wines enough against their neighbors, against the same price points, against international competition, against wines that have scored the same in a competition, or higher or lower, but the same price point. So I often do for producers tastings where we use their wines, their neighbors' wines, same price, higher, lower, etc., so that they can see where their wine actually fits in. Because, you know, nobody wants to be told your child's ugly or he's the bully in the playground, you know. And sometimes
I think that's so true. I think, I mean, we've just gone through a tasting of 300 rosés, and there's a lot of the time I'm thinking, are they not tasting anyone else's wine?
I mean, we've asked a lot of questions today, and one of the questions that we always ask rosé winemakers, one of the first questions we ask, and this goes back to the thing Liz was saying at the beginning, that in a rosé tasting, where do we even start? And it's a completely different set of questions. And one of the questions we always ask is, what is your favorite rosé from another producer? And so often that the answer is, well, actually, I really like my rosé.
I don't taste anyone else's.
And I don't really taste anyone else's because I like what I do. So I'm going to ask this question actually of our 4 producers on the call. What is your favorite rosé that isn't yours? And what do you think that says about how you interpret your own wine?
Start with?
Can we start with Stefan, please?
No.
Or Eva?
Yep.
Okay.
Stefan, your favorite rosé from another producer?
There are so many different styles. I like also some of Provence. That could be also Tavel, which is richer, which is more intensive. I think I like rosés which are really terroir driven, where you can taste the terroir, where you have a lot of impact from the vineyards. And they are not only made for easy drinking and easy consumption.
Can you name one rosé by name that you really like? Recommend to other? I know it's always difficult to remember the name.
I'm really bad in remembering the names. Verena remembers everything. We bought a lot of rosé wines in the last 5-6 years because we were thinking about what we should do with Schilcher. Should we go in a way that we make a rosé wine which is easy drinking, it works really nice on the shelf, or should we stay traditional and bring the terroir much better in the wines? And I think we choose the right direction in winemaking to present perfect in the wines the terroir, the vineyards, the region, and the tradition, because that's an USP you can't have anywhere else on the world, and it's really special, and I think that's the most important thing. And therefore, yeah, I think it's the most important thing to have terroir-driven wines and not only easy drink. It's also in terms of sales, it would be maybe easier to make it easier drinking and with a nice fancy label and a nice white bottle. But I think we did it in the right way to stay traditional and to transport the terroir better.
Okay. Eva, do you have a favorite rosé from anywhere?
Well, being part of an association of rosé from Maremma, I should name all my colleagues, but I will go away from Maremma. And I've recently tasted a wonderful Franciacorta rosé, an extra brut, and is called Lucrezia is the name, and Bonomi is the winery. And actually, they also release all vintages, so it's a very interesting winery. And I think they also got some good recognition here in Italy. But it's so flying away from Maremma, and I give you my name.
Just to explain what Eva was talking about, she'll be exhibiting on a stand with rosés from Tuscany with a group called Rosé Maris, and there are 11 producers from Rosé Maris who will be showing their wines together, a wide range of varieties and soils. It's good. Stelios, do you have a favorite rosé?
Well, to be very honest, we make good living out of rosé, but usually I would not order a rosé in a restaurant. I would prefer a white or a red. However, there's so many good ones. And although we specialize in Xinomavro rosé, our favorite variety here, you can find some good ones in the south of Greece from Agioritiko as well. They're a little bit more, I would say, darker. They are a little bit more fruitier, a little bit more dark fruit instead of like red forest fruit that we have in Xinomavro. So an example like or Skouras, are great examples.
Okay, that's good.
Unfortunately, in Greece, we don't get a lot of rosé other than Miraval and Whispering Angel, from other countries or other parts of the country.
Oh yeah, I've spoken to people who import rosé into Greece, and I'm always shocked at what they bring in. But we won't go into that. And Jörg, do you have a favorite rosé from elsewhere?
Yes, of course I do have, because it's quite important to taste the other ones as well and make comparison. Here, actually, I go for Spain, for Rioja. Viña Tonoria is one of my favorite ones. And here, the Gran Reserva, so talking about aged rosés, this is really a benchmark for me.
Oh, I have to say I'm with you on Rioja rosés. I think that's some of my favorite. So I should just say that Jörg did at Vivinum in the spring a tasting of Rosalia and Provence rosé blind. And I went into it going, this is going to be so easy, Austrian rosé versus Provence rosé. And I was quite shocked at how difficult it was to differentiate the different styles of rosé. Really quite upset me quite a bit. I thought, I doubted all my tasting ability for that one. But interesting, I don't know. Ben, like Stefan with his daughter having the memory. This is my memory for absolutely every vineyard, and I often can't remember the names of the states. So I do understand that. And good to see, Michelle, that you love Stefan's wine, or your husband loves it as well. Can I just pass you to Ben about how do people enter for the wine writing competition? Have we thought of that?
Yes, we have.
All right.
If you have our email addresses, and I'm going to put it up for just 1 second again, email us and we will send you the information. We have, for the rosé writing competition, we have prizes with a first prize, and we have prizes in 4 categories: rosé around the world, rosé as a fine wine, sustainable rosé, and 3 categories.
We deleted one.
And we're aiming for high quality articles that are very much that making the most of that flexibility. And as we were saying at the beginning, we have a couple of Jeroboams of some rather fancy rosé as prizes.
Should be quite nice. I'm just aware of the time in that there may be, I don't know if there are any final questions, but I just wanted to, this is like my sales pitch. The CWW very kindly said I could do my sales pitch. We have a tasting on the 16th of June in Edinburgh. We have a dinner with the theme of sustainability and social causes on the 17th of June in London. And on the 18th of June, we have a big walk around tasting with around 200 rosés. We have about 10 regional tables: Bandol, Provence, Austria, Navarre, northern Greece, middle of Greece.
Southern Greece, isn't it?
Well, central. Where else? Bandol. So there's actually quite a lot of chance to be able to go there, even if it's just educational, to see what the different styles are like, and a series of masterclasses.
Including a blind tasting.
blind tasting, can everyone else make an idiot of themselves like I did with the Rosalia response? And then in October, we'll have this vertical tasting and a debate on is rosé a fine wine, and a much smaller tasting the next day with some niche wines and older vintages. So if anyone is based in Edinburgh or London, do get in touch if you would like to come. And just if there are any other last questions before we stop.
Can't see any more on the chat.
So so I'll post one last question. Nobody needs to answer. Do we feel that a discussion about rosé is interesting, or should we just leave rosé as a simple, refreshing wine? Or are Ben and I basing our life on the wrong?
I was going to take it to another extreme, that 5 or 10 years ago, rosé was a category. But rosé is so big now that we can't cover everything there is to say about rosé in a 1 hour discussion or a tasting or one article. Yeah, it's 1 in 3 bottles that are drunk in France. It's 1 in 10 in the whole world. We can't talk about rosé as one category. It's not just that it's too small and too simple. It's too big and too complicated to talk about as just one category. Well, that's
very true.
That's what we're hoping.
Anyway, so I hope, as I say, any of you who can come along, you can taste all of the wines from the producers that have been talking this evening. Some of the wines will be in masterclasses. They will be there present to taste, and it should be absolutely wonderful. The only sad thing is for Ben and I, we'll probably be too busy to go around tasting the wines, so it'll be very, very sad. But anyway, and thank you so much for all coming along. It was lovely to have the discussion. As an editor, oh, Reva, but you're our favourite editor, Reva, so that's okay.
Well, Liz, I would like to say, it's up to me to say thank you to you two and to the accompanying producers, Stelios, Georg and Eva. Have I missed anybody out?
Yeah.
I've been sitting here getting thirstier and thirstier, actually. And also, I'm really sad that I should be missing your big tasting on the 18th of June.
No.
Because, Stelios, I will be on the Master of Wine trip to Greece. So I hope I'm going to get to drink some of your rosé there to make up for missing Liz's tasting. But on a serious note, I think you've actually broadened our horizons enormously. I mean, you know, it's very lazy to just think, oh, rosé is a nice pink, you know, what the French call rosé de piscine. You just sit it by the swimming pool, summer day, whatever. But actually, you know, it makes you realise there are some very serious rosés around. I suppose my local wine in the Languedoc is Gérard Bertrand's Clos du Temple. And you haven't mentioned Bondol, which I think is a rosé that can age very well. So
Bondol
don't start.
is a can of worms, absolute can of worms. Well, maybe when we'll have to arrange, maybe we meet up and do a Bandol dinner, Rosemary.
That'd be fun. Yes, we do that somewhere. That'd be very good. Anyway, thank you enormously to everybody who participated and contributed to which I think has been a very mind-broadening Let's Talk About. So many thanks.